Hey guys, in this video I am going to show you how to glaze. So there are lots of little rules when it comes to glazing, and there's actually lots of different types of glazes and lots of approaches to glazing. I'm going to show you how to glaze using really simple food safe glazes and how to get the best results with those glazes. So in my classroom we use teacher's palette glaze, and it's made by Amico, and it's just a very standard basic glaze. What you see is what you get. So this is the color that this green will be, and this is the color that this yellow will be. You'll notice when you look at the glaze, it looks really pastel and it looks like a matte finish. After your glaze is fired in the kiln, as long as you put on enough glaze, it will be bright and shiny. And in my classroom, I tell my students you want 3 layers of glaze. 1 layer, you're gonna be able to see through it and it's not gonna be shiny. 2 layers, it'll be a little bit shiny and it'll be a little bit darker or a little bit brighter. And then 3 layers is what I call the sweet spot. And that's when it's gonna be nice and bright and shiny and opaque. You're not gonna be able to see through it at all. So I'm going to show you what that looks like right now, just using, something I had in my kiln room. I have all sorts of projects in my kiln room. So this is just a low fire clay that's been fired 1 time in the kiln, meaning it's bisquare, okay? Clay that has been fired 1 time in the kiln is bisquare. That means it's ready to be glazed. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you what these layers look like, okay? So I'm just gonna take a standard Granny Smith apple green, and I'm gonna go ahead and put on my first layer. And I'm not gonna do the entire piece right now because that would just take forever for this demo. But I'm gonna go ahead and spread on my first layer. We do say even because if you don't do it evenly, you're gonna have some areas that might be darker or shinier than other areas. And so I just took my glaze and I'm gonna spread it out nice and evenly until I have my first layer. So after you have your first layer on there, if you're sticking with this color, you don't have to wait for it to 100% dry, but you are gonna notice that it does dry pretty quickly. And so I'm now ready to put on my second layer. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. I'm gonna dip my brush in the glaze, and I'm gonna go ahead and put my second layer on. And again, you want it to be nice and even. Okay. So now I've got my second layer of glaze on. Now, with my younger kids' projects, usually I tell them not to glaze the bottom. If you glaze the bottom of your work, it will stick to the shelf of the kiln. So the only way you can get around that is if you put the artwork, if it's glazed on the bottom, if you put it on these special little stilts, and that will keep it from sticking to the shelf. So with some of my older kids, when we do bigger projects, I'll tell them you can glaze the whole thing and the bottom, and I'll just put them on stilts. So this second layer is about dry. Not that you have to wait for it to completely dry, but it's almost completely dry. So I'm gonna go ahead and do my third layer. Now, 3 layers is a sweet spot. If you put way too much glaze on, the glaze will drip down onto the shelf of the kiln and your work will fuse to the shelf. So that's why it's important that as you're glazing, you do count your layers, okay? So now I've got my 3 layers on. Let's say I want to add like polka dots on to my chameleon, okay? What you can do if you want to do that is it doesn't really count as a 4th layer if it's just polka dots or lines or little designs. So you can actually do that over top of the glaze. I wait till it's dry so it doesn't mix and smear, but then I go ahead and I grab a fine tip brush and I add those details on. If you want like one side green and then like maybe like a bright blue stripe down the back and then the other side green. You could also do green and then 3 layers of the blue stripe and then green on the other side. Or you can do the whole thing green in 3 layers and then just do 1 stripe of the blue. It just the color might not be quite as intense because it's only 1 layer of the stripe, okay? So I'm gonna show you what it looks like to add little details after you've got your base layer. So I'm gonna go ahead and take a finer tip brush, and I'm gonna use yellow for this. And I'm gonna get the glaze on my brush. And let's say I just wanna add some yellow polka dots. I can just go ahead and start going bloop, bloop. And then when I don't have much glaze on my brush again, I can dip and add more, okay? So you can overlap glazes as long as you're adhering to, you know, your 3 layers and then any little details on top, okay? So that is how you glaze. Few other things that I know, you know, we probably already talked about in class and it might be a review, but I always describe glaze as basically like painting with colored glass because there's a lot of silica in it, and silica is what glass is made out of, and when you fire or melt silica, it turns into glass. So the minerals in the glaze give it its color, and the silica makes it nice and shiny like glass. So it's not paint, and it's supposed to be fired in the kiln again so that it can actually turn into the bright shiny glaze that you want to see on your work. All right, well, thank you for listening. Bye-bye.